it's looking at the parts of them that they had to reject in order to be liked, loved, accepted, or even to survive. Like, children that go through abuse, teenagers, even adults that go through abuse, parts of them they've got to reject. And a lot of the times that is their inner child, the part of them that is very vulnerable and, nurturing and caring. And like they really shut that down. And that's a survival mechanism, and it's teaching safety within self, safety to really own all of those parts that you were taught that were like wrong or bad.
There you go, and we are live, and welcome to today's beautiful conversation on shining the light, where I really have the honor and the excitement of talking to the beautiful Skye Louise, who's joining us all the way from the west coast of Australia to talk about something that's also close to my heart. I'm just making sure that everything is all right when we are live, and we are. So welcome, Skye. Welcome to our conversation.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're right. And like I said, I'm excited to be able to just to chat with you really about your journey. And I'd like to first of all just take an opportunity just to honor you and to thank you for joining us today, and to talk about your journey through abuse and basically how you help others as well. So can we first start by just telling us about yourself? Tell us a little bit about you, who you are, and how you got to where you are now.
Yeah. I love it when people sort of ask me like, who are you? And I'm like, well, I'm many different things. But if like the crux of it is I'm currently now a 36-year-old mum of two boys. Um, that is like loving my life, loving what I'm doing, but essentially it wasn't always the case. So I unfortunately grew up in a very toxic, abusive, and a chaotic environment, and at the age of 12, I suffered through sexual abuse from my father, which is one of the most damaging things that, a young girl can really go through. And that's like, obviously, that really shaped my younger years in a sense. Like I, really lost that trust in the father role, the masculine, like that connection was really broken. And I delved down like unhealthy coping mechanisms, because obviously the way I grew up in my house is like you don't talk about what happens behind closed doors, so I shut everything down and I suppressed everything. And when my parents finally divorced, I, got the courage to actually open up to my mum about what had happened. And a lot of, feelings that a lot of people that go through that kind of abuse, like shame, guilt, what if they don't believe me, all of the things, the fear, and gratefully enough, like she did believe me. And in a sense, she then also started putting puzzle pieces together, because like growing up, I was always the big tomboy. There was photos of me on motorbikes and like my head inside the car, like helping my dad fix everything. So we had like a really, really cool connection when I was very, very little. And, at a certain point, at like from the age of 12, I like completely disconnected and like literally glued myself to my mum's hip. And, and like, in a sense, unconsciously making sure that I put myself into places where it couldn't happen again, and sometimes that was unavoidable. And sometimes, I could actually control it a little bit. But I think the real hurt and the real pain that I went through is after I came out and sort of said this was what's going on. And my mum was like, what do you want to do about it? Like, this is your pain, and, all that sort of stuff. And I decided that I did want to actually pursue, child molestation charges. And we, connected with a lawyer and, all of that sort of stuff to actually really get that ball rolling, or finding out what I could do after, 2 years of silence to break that, and, you know, I lost a lot of faith in the justice system because I was asked incredibly inappropriate questions as a child. And, after that, I was practically told not to even bother, because he was like, I wasn't going to win. And, that led to, like, that's massive heartbreak as a child. And you learn that, if you do the wrong thing, you suffer consequences and punishment. And it's just like, hang on a minute, how did this person do such horrible things and get away with it? And it wasn't just me he did horrible things to, it was my entire family. So again, like, I suppressed everything, and when we suppress, obviously we self-regulate in ways that we knew how. So I went down the road of addiction. I was in abusive relationships because I thought that was normal, all of those sort of things. And, through my late teens, and when I hit 21, like, I hit my version of rock bottom. And, I literally just, like, the flashbacks were horrendous, all of the things. And I woke up one day and, realized that I was becoming a person I didn't want to be. And I just went, I can't keep doing this. Like, I can't, and I went to my doctors, which I was then sort of, diagnosed with PTSD, which, if it was around back when I was diagnosed, it would have been CPTSD, which is a complex post-traumatic stress disorder, a severe anxiety disorder, and depression. So years in therapy, and all of the things. But I really think, I always had such a great passion for helping people. And my first career was hairdressing. I really just loved making people feel beautiful and feel cherished and feel loved. But after I had kids, it was like, hello, next rock bottom. Kids just like to, like, oh, you think you healed? Okay, here, have this. And I really realized that, like, I healed to a certain perspective, but I was still hanging on to so much. And it was destroying my body. It was destroying my soul. And it just, again, I was just like, hang on a minute. I'm literally becoming my parents. And I'm like, nah, something's got to change. And, that kind of led me down more of the holistic path, and I did things like, I studied fitness, I studied NLP, and I studied hypnotherapy. I now hold the highest certification for hypnotherapy, which is my diploma, because I've studied all levels. Because once I sort of delved into that and discovered things like root cause therapy and, trauma informed therapy and all of those sort of things, like, for me, that was just like, okay, this is the key. Like, I get it. We can logic ourselves, but if we don't actually go back and really heal the root cause, logicking yourself out of it doesn't work.
Mm.
And for me, in a nutshell, I guess I really realized that the best, and this probably sounds really horrible, but for me, the best revenge and the best punishment was, for what happened to me, was thriving. It was like, I'm not going to let this dictate how I run my life. No, you did not ruin my life. You know what? I grabbed it, and I learned, and I learned how to overcome, and I learned how to heal, and I learned how to grow, and I learned how to evolve, and I learned how to break the cycle. And that's what I do now, is that I really, help people, grow and evolve and teach. Because sometimes, and not all the times, when we look into Western culture and Western medicine, it's just like, you're broken. And that's it. And I'm like, no, you don't have to settle. You don't have to use this pain as a reason to be like, well, this is just my life. I'm like, as my business partner calls it, like beige. You don't have to live in beige land where, you're just going through the motions and, hoping that you wake up the next day. I just went, nope. All of the pain, all of the anger, all of the hurt, all of the damage that I had, I gave it back. I'm like, this is not my shame to carry. This is not my guilt. This is not my hurt. Like, this is yours. Have it back. And, once I really realized that, like, real beautiful art of letting go, it was like, oh, yeah, I get it. This is what it like. This is like what it's like to, have that sense of freedom. And that's not to say that what happened didn't happen. Of course it did. But I transformed it and I grew through it rather than letting it keep me suppressed and small for the rest of my life.
Wow, thank you. I just feel the need just to take a breath and go, like I said, to really thank you for sharing that and for being so open and so vulnerable in sharing your journey, because I know when we do share our journeys to others, it's actually an inspiration, and you are an inspiration, Skye. So thank you.
Yeah, and that's true. And one inspiration, but one thing that I've used and I will continue to use and continue to share with my clients, my friends, is things like shame dies when you bring to light the things that you hide behind closed doors.
I like that. Shame dies when you bring to light the things that you hide. Like that. Thank you ever so much. And is that what we would call shadow work? Because I know you very
Yes.
much
Yeah.
tell
Yes and no. Shadow work's a beautiful concept. And, shame's not necessarily the shadow. Shame's the thing we feel because it's what we're supposed to feel.
yes.
So, shadow work essentially is bringing a sense of wholeness back to you. So, it's looking at all the parts that you have disconnected, disowned, rejected in order to be liked, loved, and accepted. So when I work with people on breaking the cycle, or, so they don't attract like narcissistic or toxic style relationships anymore, it's looking at the parts of them that they had to reject in order to be liked, loved, accepted, or even to survive. Like, children that go through abuse, teenagers, even adults that go through abuse, parts of them they've got to reject. And a lot of the times that is the inner child, the part of them that is very vulnerable and, nurturing and caring, and like they really shut that down, and that's a survival mechanism, and it's teaching safety within self, safety to really own all of those parts that you were taught that were like wrong or bad. As an example, a lot of women are taught that like anger is bad, for example. No, you're not allowed to be angry. You're a woman. You don't show anger, whatever the conditioning is, right? Um, and therefore, they shut it down. And they're like, oh, I'm not allowed that. That means that no one will love me if I'm angry. But unfortunately, what happens is they tend to bring in a lot of angry people into their life, because they're over exaggerating that emotion. And like if you want to then flip the coin, like a lot of men are taught that fear and sadness are bad and wrong in more of a masculine sense, like you're weak if you have fear and all that sort of stuff. So they shut it down and it comes out as anger. So you'll express the emotion that's okay while you suppress the one that's not. And that's very, very like basic example, but that's sort of how that, connection back to wholeness, because you will attract what you reject.
Absolutely. Thank you. And it's so true, especially what you just said, that we attract what we reject, because we're still we're still living that, even though we're kind of rejecting it. And
Yeah, you're taking the long way around.
Thank you. Absolutely. And tell us more, if I can, like if you can share the moment that you decided to embrace shadow work for yourself, and how has that transformed your life?
That's a fantastic question as I like think back to the moment that I embraced shadow work. Um, gosh, I'm like, he was like, how old am I? So it was definitely like a few years ago. And I was working with a beautiful holistic coach at the time, and he had recommended a couple of books for me to read. And I was like, yep, cool. And I was sort of reading these books, and I was just like, holy shit, this makes sense. I get it. I understand, and so therefore, that's sort of what really started me down the journey of like shadow work. And then I picked up Debbie Ford's book, The Dark Side of the Light Chasers. Fantastic book. Read it. Don't get anything for it, but it's a really good book. If you want to dive into, or want to get to know a little bit more of shadow work, I love the way that Debbie explains it in ways that the normal person can understand. And like through that, then I continued studying, and I studied sort of shadow work in my hypnotherapy and NLP certifications and like shadow selves. And the real sort of transformative part for me personally was when I integrated the shadow of my dad. Because yeah, like what you reject the most, you will, as I said, you either attract or you become that without realizing it. And, I'd started becoming that real shut down, rejecty sort of person, like, oh no, I'm not a narcissist, and like pushed it so far away. But when you push it so far away, you lose that sense of being able to place boundaries down for yourself, and, know when to say no and be selfish with yourself and look after your own energy.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. I was just taking that in, that when you do look after yourself, it's you're looking after your energy and things. So thank you ever so much for that. And I'm also just looking that we do have people watching us. So hello to Samantha. If you have any questions or any comments, please put them in the comments, and we'll certainly get them back to Skye. So thank you for that. And can we move on a little bit, Skye? Like, we're talking about shadow work, and that I think has a lot to do, or is very connected to generational trauma,
Yes.
right? So tell us a little bit about that. What are some signs that someone might be carrying or experiencing generational trauma without actually realizing it?
Well, one of the biggest signs is if you're moving through the same patterns as your parents and your grandparents, so are your relationship styles the same? Are your behavior and mannerisms the same? And and a lot of the times as well, you'd feel, and this is the only way I can explain, you'd feel this like real weight upon your shoulders. You're exhausted, you're tired, you're drained, and sometimes you don't even really know why. It's like this real stuck feeling, and you just don't know where it comes from, and you don't know why. Or you find yourself repeating the same loops over. And, as I said earlier, logic brain, you sit there in logic and you're like, no, this is not who I want to be. But because the clearing work hasn't been done, and those neural pathways are grooved right in, you just automatically just keep doing it until we make it conscious, essentially. So that is one of the signs. And the biggest one is essentially like, really carrying it. So, one of the biggest like generational traumas, especially that I work with, and it's you're hearing a lot of it now, which is fantastic, is witch wounds.
Yes.
And so when you look into, what witch wounds encompass, is a lot of the time it's fear of judgment, fear of ridicule, people-pleasing tendencies, minimizing of self, not being loud, not expressing, so communicating or using your throat chakra. But it's like turned up to 11. Like you're carrying all this fear, and like that it's not all yours. And that's sort of like the really big telling. It's like, where is all this fear coming from? Like, I don't even know why I'm so afraid. Like, I've got nothing to be afraid of, but yet it's there. And it's just like, that is the real big telltale sign that you're carrying stuff from your lineage that is being passed down and passed down and passed down until someone goes, hang on a minute, I need to get rid of this.
Yes, and thank you for sharing that, because it's really true. Sometimes we don't realize that what we're experiencing has been passed down, because not everyone can really understand that concept.
Yeah.
How can trauma be passed down through the different generations?
And happens as well is because no one talks. Family are saying things. That knowledge is then lost.
And even though we don't talk about stuff, and that stuff has a tendency of showing.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Love to talk a little. So it's like, it's a bold phrase, but can to basically unfuck themselves from the past, because we really, generations, all the stuff that our generations have passed through else. And what people don't realize.
Well, for me, like in the way I work is for being here is, helping that is, like as I said, like I use a lot of unconscious to do generational healing, to itself. So you can just stand up and like 100% know your worth about that, and knowing that that will come people that benefited from manipulation and all that. Stand in your power in that space and go, cool, you can throw your hand. That's not a me problem. And actually let that go. And yeah, so like a version of like unfucking yourself is if you haven't already noticed, and I haven't actually apologized or warned anyone, is that I do actually swear quite a lot.
Yeah.
And that is 100% me being unapologetically me.
Yes.
Even when I work with clients, I'm like, all right, cool. Is it okay if I just be me? Which means the word fuck is just going to come out and we're just going to roll with it. Because I'm not a standard therapist. You won't find me in like, I love suits, by the way, but you won't find me in like stuffy offices and suits. And like, I'll be in here with my sound bowls and my coffin shelf and, like I have my witchy spells and all that sort of stuff. It's just, that's just me. And, and I've had a few people go, you don't look like a professional. I'm like, cool. I'm not here to fit a mold.
Exactly.
And a lot, I work with a lot of like neurodivergent people as well, even undiagnosed like ADHD in the system or ASD symptoms. And one of the biggest things that they, come to me is they want to stop masking.
Yes.
Because it's exhausting, but the fear of just them being themselves is so prevalent because they've been told that, they're too loud or they're too emotional or they're this or they're that. And it's, I think I had one of my clients, she's finished up now. She used to get into relationships in order to dim herself down and she didn't want to do that anymore. But when she was excited, she was overly excited. She would jump up and down. Or when she was sad, she was very sad. And I'm like, cool, be like that.
Okay.
Because the right person will come along and love you for that, love you for your outwardly expressions of emotions.
Thank you. And thank you for sharing that. And it's so true. It takes courage to stand in your power.
Oh yeah, it's not easy.
Yes. Yeah. So thank you so much for sharing that. And Skye, can I just say, you can swear as much as you like. Not a problem for me, because it's who you are. And that's one of the biggest things. It's why I love talking to people and having these conversations, is because we want to get to know the real you. And the real you is very inspirational. Your journey that you've been through is incredible. And I couldn't even stop just for one moment to really understand what it's like, because because I'm not you.
Yeah.
But I'm honored to be able to give you a platform and opportunity to share the real you. And if that's swearing and being your true self, then please come back and swear a lot. It's not a
Yeah.
but what I'd love to do is to, before we finish up, is to go into a little bit more. You started, about loving, other people and getting getting experiencing love from other people and all that stuff. But what about self-love? What role does self-love play in healing the shadows, in integrating the shadows of our lives and our past? And how can someone really start to cultivate, to experience more self-love instead of relying on other people, depending on other people and other things
Yeah.
to
Self-love is literally, I believe anyway, the main role in shadow work. Shadow work is the ultimate form of self-love, because you are literally learning to love the parts of you that are bad. You are learning to love yourself through mistakes. You are learning to love yourself through your own journey. If you don't love part of you that is selfish, or you don't love the part of you that, is desirable and sexual and all of those sort of things, well, how are you going to actually even find love in those places and spaces? Because it's going to be deformed and it's going to be like manipulated and all of that. So it's not really authentic. So yeah, really finding that place is just like mwah, like chef's kiss, right? And how we can really start to cultivate that is start small. Like, you don't have to go and win the war. Essentially, start with one little battle at a time. And like for a lot of clients, if they are wanting to go on their shadow journey without a practitioner present, I'll always recommend, start with emotions, start with behaviors, start with traits, start journaling, what emotions am I not allowing myself to feel? Why? And that will give you the answer of where it lies, and then because we all have the answers within ourselves, right? Then ask yourself, what can I do to start expressing that and loving myself for expressing that? What is it going to give me? Because everything that you disconnect, even if it is perceived as negative, comes with a gift. Anger comes with worth. Anger comes with boundaries, like as I explain it. Like when you get angry, that is a boundary being hit. Now, if you've shut that down and you're not allowing yourself to feel angry, how are you supposed to feel your internal boundaries? How are you supposed to go, hang on a minute, something's not right? And that's a real gift. That's your intuition right there. If you're not allowing yourself to feel fear, well, what are you doing then? Because fear is a very normal emotion. Human beings are designed to feel fear to keep themselves safe. What are you afraid of? Is it an actual thing or is it a make-believe thing? Why is this coming through? What does this mean for me? What would happen if I love it and accept it fully? If we can start with like emotions and behaviors and kind of like chip away at the surface, then you can go into bigger stuff, like, shadowing yourself, like your ex-partners, parents are a really good one. And then you walk into shadow selves, and that's a really, really big integration, and then on top of that as well, you can look into your, what we call shadow values. And that is what is your desired state and what is your negative traits. And when you go through that process, and I will be actually having a workshop on that in the next few weeks, you will find that your shadow self and your desired state or your higher self kind of want the same thing. They're just kind of button heads about it. So you need to then get them to communicate and talk to each other and go hey, I'm the boss here. Let's do this thing. So one doesn't take over the other.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's time to get to know each other and time to love each other. Time to love all parts of each other, of one another, of yourself. And I love it how, to get to know your or to have a conversation, basically to walk into your ex-partner's parents.
Mm.
A lot would come from. So thank you for sharing that. And this has been a wonderful conversation, Skye, but please come back. That's all I can say is let's continue the journey, because we could go into so many different parts and so deep, and it's very, very healing for everyone who's watching, whether it's live or on the replay, because there's so many different parts, as you say, of ourselves that it's now time to integrate.
Yep.
From just our past, let alone generational past and everything else. And then you've got, parents of past generations. So
Yeah, timelines, parallel timelines, past lifelines.
and it's a minefield there. So thank you so much. Now people can contact you. We have been putting all your links in the comments. So thank you to Maymuna who's been doing that. And people can contact you just for a chat.
Yeah, 100%. You can contact me on Facebook and just reach out via Messenger. I love questions. I thrive off questions. So, even if you just want to ask questions, or even if you just want to like stalk my page for a wee while, go for it. You can book in for a free consult if you're just not sure, or if you're feeling like, oh, I think this is kind of what I'm looking for, but I'm not really sure. Book in and let's just have a one-to-one chat, and I can get to know you, you can get to know me, and then we go from there.
Yeah.
And the beautiful thing is it's like, yeah, and that's just how I work. I love questions. I love, just connecting with people and, finding out where they're stuck and if I can potentially help them. And if it's what they're going through is not really in my expertise, I have a little black book of like so many other people in my world that I can, pass you guys on to. And that's the beautiful thing about community.
Absolutely. And that's why I'm really honored to have you part of Sacred You. I'm really honored to have you come to share your journey with us today, and do hope that you come back. And I'm looking forward to you being on one of our next panels, because I
think that's Friday.
You're on a panel, yes, which is really, really good. And before we go, Skye, can I just ask you, is there any other questions that I could have asked you? And how would have you answered? Anything else that you'd like to share?
I don't think so.
All good.
Yeah. So I think you did fantastic.
And like I said, I do hope that you'll come back again and continue the journey, continue the conversation. We'd love to know, about Skye's journey, part 2 and part 3 and everything else, and how you actually really go deep into integrating the work that you do with others, and how that has helped you with your life. So I'd love to know more even.
Definitely.
So thank you ever so much.
Thank you.